Nice to have you listening to At Issue on this Wednesday afternoon, October 10th. And we are in a fall membership drive, but as I promised you when it started, we wouldn't ask for a lot of money every day. So today I'll just mention you can pledge at WPR.org. And the rest of the hour, well, for the most part, we'll just talk to Gerald Celente in this hour. He is founder and director of the TrendsResearchInstitute. He publishes the TrendsJournal. He has some thoughts about where our economy is, where it's going, the race for the White House, what's going on in Iran, what's going on in Israel, what's going on in the hearts, souls, and minds of voters. An active hour with Gerald Celente always, and you can join in to be heard at 800-486-8655. Lines are open so you can get on board and talk to Gerald Celente. Gerald, welcome back to That Issue. Good afternoon.
Oh, thanks for having me back, man.
I know it's going to be everything is turning up roses. The sun is going to shine. Temperatures will warm. The economy will grow, and all will be well in America. So we could say we're done now, right? I've covered everything you wanted to say.
That's it. They fixed it. They said they would. It's done. Happy days are here again.
Gerald, let's start with this. Prostitutes? Really? Me?
I don't know about you.
You're calling members of the media prostitutes?
Oh, absolutely.
What did we do?
That's about it. It's the same thing. You know, if you watch the debates, there was the prostitute right there. You know, it's always softball questions. It's always deferring. It's always bowing down. It's never asking really hard questions. Meet the prostitutes. You can watch it every Sunday on NBC.
You're killing me. All right, meet the prostitutes. And the press that's not putting the hammer down enough to the candidates.
Let me just keep going on with that so you know it's not empty words. There's in this issue of the TrendsJournal, we have a story in there about how the New York Times, and they write it, and other news agencies, before they will say anything that's been said to them by either of the candidates or any of the people within their campaigns, they have to go back to them to get, quote, approval. I mean, I'm not making this up. This is printed in the New York Times. This is after you do an interview with me, and then you're going to write the interview, and then you call me back and say, is this okay? This is what you said. Can I say that? And this is America? You know, we wrote the only difference between the USSA and the USSR is in the USSA you lose your job. In the USSR you lose your life. You know, so what's because I'm not making this up.
Well, hopefully, I've not seen how the New York Times spelled that out for you. Hopefully, what they're saying is they're double checking to make sure the quote is accurate.
No. They're getting all quote approval, talking about Romney's sons. This is the right way to do it. Again, it's all there in black and white. Anybody could Google it up. The stories are there.
More important than how you view the media, it's the two men we're talking about that we're covering and talking about and voting for, perhaps voting for in the next month. You said about a year ago that you thought, given who the opponent would be, given the field of potential opponents, President Obama was going to pretty much walk, if not run, to re-election. But you don't seem to be saying that in the current issue. What's changed?
Well, what's changed, and again, our trend alert that went out was October 3rd, ironically, 2011, a year to the day of the debate. And we made in that forecast, we called it the presidential reality show, and we said that our forecast was not based on substantive differences between the Republican challengers and the president, and nor was it, anything of I have no agenda. I'm a political atheist. It was based on performance. And we said that the president was the teleprompter extraordinaire and when he hit the stage. And it was all about show. And that's what we said, reflecting back on the debates between Republican candidates. Remember, this is written in 2011 on October 3rd. Celente says this isn't politics as an exercise in democracy in action. It's politics as show business for ugly people. Anyone who saw the September 12th debate, and this is Republican, hosted by CNN, witnessed an early episode of the presidential reality show. It was a star-spangled, made-for-TV spectacle appropriating the lowest common denominator elements of the World Wrestling Federation, the Miss America pageant, and American Idol. Given that this is what is passed off as political debate in America, come Election Day, the American Idol winner will be, a.k.a. the President of the United States, will be the best performer. And Barack Obama has proven that he can outperform and out-teleprompt them all. He will tell the teleprompted truth the audience wants to hear. So Obama bombed. We only based it on a song and dance show, and Obama didn't live up to his expectations.
But that's just the first act.
That's just the first act, and that's what we're saying. It depends on who performs next on the next round of the presidential reality show.
Although, it sounds like you're sort of cutting edge and poking fun at these guys and sort of taking a slap at all of us in America, how we view things. Didn't we do the same thing with Nixon and Kennedy?
Absolutely
people watch that
not.
debate?
You look back at those debates, there was substance. I have to watch this stuff, and I fell asleep. And I'm not making that up. Watching the Obama-Romney debates, I fell asleep. Anybody to me, and I'm only speaking for myself. You know my motto. Think for yourself. I cannot consider myself a proud American after watching those two people perform on stage. There was no substance there. That was kiddie stuff. And this is what it all passes off for. And that's why we wrote a year ago, watching the Republican debates, this is show business for ugly people. To me, it's a disgrace what's going on.
I hear what you're saying, but again, I'll go back to 1960. People say, if you heard the debate, Nixon won it. If you watched it, Kennedy won it, because Nixon didn't look good. He was coming off being sick. Jack Kennedy had a tan. He looked young. He looked healthy. He looked vibrant. The view of who was the pretty boy came across in the American electorate's eyes. What's changed?
Oh, well, you're right. I mean, there's no arguing that. What's changed is the total lack of substance. And look at the conventions. These conventions, again, to me, only speaking for myself, they were part halftime NFL Super Bowl and part megachurch revival meeting. All the families out there. I'm not a kid. I've been around a while. I've never heard women talk about their husbands like these guys, man. These are the perfect guys, with the perfect kids. They go over the river and through the woods to grandmother's house. I mean, this was, this again, to me, again, only speaking for myself, it was an insult to my intelligence.
All right, let's talk about where the country's at as you see it and based on where you think we may be going in the next month. If President Obama at that debate had said, my opponent hasn't said this to me yet tonight, but if he was to say, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? And I'm President Obama now saying this, and he says, of course you are. Maybe individually, not everybody, but where we were when I was elected versus where we're at today, economically, things are better. Are they where we want them to be? No, but there's no denying the American economic picture is brighter today than it was 4 years ago. Would you think that statement was accurate?
I would definitely say that statement in its context is accurate. But I would say at the cost of what made it accurate, it wasn't worth it. And the cost of what made it accurate was toward, again, and having written about this as it continually goes on,
right,
is that there used to be a thing in America, it was called capitalism, and that you rose and failed on your own merits. And now it's become a country of too big to fails. The reason this is being propped up is for one reason and one reason only. And that's an estimated $23 trillion, with a T, $23 trillion that the Federal Reserve has pumped into the system, not only in the United States, but worldwide to keep it up. And those too big to fails, the rest of us, of course, you, Ben Merens, could fail. There's nobody's going to bail you out or me out or anybody else there listening. But they made up a new rule. It's called too big to fail. And these too big to fails became a lot bigger. So then when you say, yes, is it better? Definitely in terms of the amounts of people that were losing jobs, but where is the country heading as a result of this? Again, when you look at the data, and I'm not making the data up, if you look, for example, at the questionable, as I'm not questioning them, but the people that were questioning the latest unemployment numbers that came, the new job creation numbers, 114,000 jobs are created. We have to create 150,000 just to stay even. Then you look at those jobs. 53% of those jobs, 53%, were in health aides, were in ambulance services, were in bartenders and waitresses. We lost jobs in manufacturing. So what we're doing is, yes, the situation looks better, but it's kind of like giving someone a drug when they're suffering from a chronic degenerative disease and they're not dying as quickly.
When we talk about the state of not just the United States economically, but the global position, where the dollar is at and where the currencies are at, you have a lot to say in the Journal about that right now, too. We're trying to figure out, will Spain be sustained, and Greece, the rest of Europe, the United States. What's your biggest concern when it comes to looking at the global economic situation and the currencies that we count on?
War. And here's the way I look at it. You know how they say history repeats itself? It never repeats itself exactly the same way. You had the crash of 1929. It was followed by the Great Depression. Then currency wars, trade wars, and World War II. You see, as I see it, I see a replay of it. The Panic of '08, the Great Depression. You ask me what's going on in Spain, in Portugal, in Greece, in Ireland, in much of the world. There's depression. And in the United States, depending, again, whose numbers you're looking at and what's going on, it's depression. And then currency wars. There's a currency war going on. I'm not making this up. Again, you know,
what does that mean?
We just saw the third round of quantitative easing, and last month. The European Central Bank is offering unlimited purchases of bonds of troubled Eurozone countries. The Bank of China is responding to their slowing growth. They're in a housing bubble over there by cutting interest rates continually, trimming reserve requirements, and dumping stimulus money in. What does this mean? It devalues the currency so exporters could sell more of their stuff overseas. So then you hear the response, and you listen to the response from the Brazilian finance minister, Manteiga. Not my words, his. A currency war has begun. Because what the people are doing is, you know, they can't export their product anymore because it's too expensive. And then you go listen to the campaign rhetoric between Romney and Obama. You hear the trade war rhetoric heating up against China, and you're going to continue to hear this as the global economies slow down. And then my concern is, as I said, is war. There was no Arab Spring. That was made up. And again, I'm saying it's made up because I'm a person that was writing about it before it happened. All it had to do with, it wasn't about a dictatorship or living under autocracies, it was or monarchies. It's about people living in poverty. And the poverty levels, for example, in Egypt, you have 80 million people, and on average they're living on $10 a day, and the corruption is rampant. The same thing that happened in Tunisia before it happened. The same thing that's going on in Yemen or Bahrain. This is about economics. When people lose everything, is my saying, and have nothing left to lose, they lose it. They're losing it in Spain. Of course, today the front cover of the New York Times, the paper of record, is a big picture of that guy Sandusky. Is there much coverage about the riots that are going on in Spain and Portugal and Greece as we speak? Are you going to be able to turn in CNN, the most trusted name in news, or ABC or CBS, and watch these? Do you know what I tune into? I tune into Russia Today and China TV. Who would have thought to see this kind of coverage?
Gerald, I'm going to leave you there for a second. Catch your breath. Gerald Celente stays with us through the hour as we take your calls about his thoughts about the way he sees our nation and the world. Your comments and questions for him. Gerald Celente is director of the Trends Research Institute, publisher of the Trends Journal, TrendsResearch.com, the website, or a link at WPR.org. We talk about the race for the White House, our economic situation in the nation, the global economic position. What you think of the media? Well, it's sort of all on the table when we talk to Gerald Celente. 800-486-8655. Glad to have you listening to At Issue. It is our fall membership pledge drive. So if you'd like to pledge your support, I'll gently ask you a couple times this afternoon to do so at WPR.org. The program is At Issue. Lines open so you can be heard at 800-486-8655. Pleasure to have you tuned to At Issue on this Wednesday, October 10th. I'm Ben Merens, talking to Gerald Celente from the Trends Research Institute about the way he sees the world and the way you see the world as well. 800-486-8655, how you call in to be heard. You can also pledge your support to At Issue and these kind of conversations we have each and every day. Our fall membership drive continuing through the week. WPR.org is how you go online and pledge the amount that you feel is right for you and for us. Again, Gerald, appreciate you making time to be here. Callers for you will start in Rushford, Minnesota. Taylor, welcome to That Issue. Good afternoon.
Hi, thank you. Gerald, I just got to say you are amazing. Anyway, my question is, as an organic farmer, a small family organic farm, around here, southeast Minnesota and southwest Wisconsin, land prices are sky high, and only the guys with thousands of acres are allowed to borrow the money to purchase that land. And as quantity goes up, quality goes down. And I'm wondering if you see a bubble bursting anytime soon in the agricultural sector.
I really don't know, but you made the point that this is what's happened to the country, and it's been going on for a long time. It's not under Obama. Is that the playing field is tipped to the bigs. The bigs get all the breaks. So I don't know. I don't know because when you, and matter of fact, a part of this TrendsJournal, it begins with the weather conditions going on in the United States and around the world, and the price of commodities, corn, soybeans, etc., and how we're playing it back. The parallels that I was talking about between the Great Depression in the 20s and 30s, and now with a dust bowl of sorts. What was it? 64% of the nation was in drought this year. In the areas where cattle and livestock are raised, 80% drought conditions. So those are the factors that are the unknowns. And by the way, that's why nobody can predict the future. You can forecast, you think you know where it's going to go, but there are the wild cards. So if the wild card weather stays the way it is, and these conditions continue in going the way they are, I believe that land prices will continue to escalate in areas particularly where there is, weather patterns that are favorable to growing. And by the way, on organic, I've been writing about that for years. So I coined the term clean food. It was in the New York Times in 1993. So this is a huge trend. And matter of fact, we're putting together our top list for 2012. One of them is going to be safe foods. So this is really the future. Is it the future for everybody? No. But it's the future for people that want to progress in a healthy and safe way. And that's why, you're in the business. That's the business to be in.
Taylor, appreciate the call. Gerald Celente, our guest on That Issue this afternoon. You join in with your comments, reactions, and responses at 800-486-8655. Beloit, our next stop. Gerald, Dan, our next caller. Hello, Dan.
Hey, how you doing today?
Good. How are you?
Great. I love your guest, Gerald. I agree with everything you had to say. I think the press would call you cynical, but I'd call you honest. I wish you were the moderator at that dog and pony show we called the debate. It was just the dog and pony show with less hair is all it was. I agree with everything you had to say.
You have a question for Gerald today, Dan?
No, I pretty much don't. I just really wanted to just let you know. I appreciate you having someone honest on.
Dan, I appreciate your call, and I'm sure Gerald does as well. Gerald, had you been in Jim Lehrer's shoes on the first debate, and you had the first question for both candidates and could insist they answer the question, what would that question have been?
How are you going to really repair the economy? Let's stop all these generalizations. All they did was talk about taxes. It doesn't repair the economy. How are you really going to create jobs in the truest sense? Let's look at the jobs that are being created. And you, Mr. Romney, you're the one that talks about you know how to create jobs, and you keep bragging about Staples. Oh, wonderful, jobs at Staples. That's right. You get a temporary job. By the end of the week, you walk home with $62.50 a week and a hernia, and you call that a job? Oh, how about there used to be a thing, Mr. Romney, you vulture capitalist of Bain Capital, that used to be called stationery stores, and they were all over the country. Every city, every town had them, but no more. You wanted it all. You're going to create jobs? What kind of jobs? And you, Mr. Obama, You're the guy. Oh, yeah, you're going to get tough on Wall Street. And you talk tough all the time, how you're going to do banking regulations and change the economy. How many people have you prosecuted, Mr. Obama, for the crimes that were committed during the financial crisis? You know, the ones that the Goldman Sachs gang paid $555 million. But, of course, we didn't admit or deny any wrongdoing. You didn't see any heads roll. How about the MF Global scandal with John Corzine, the former governor, the guy that bundled money for you of New Jersey and senator of New Jersey, brought down MF Global. Cat can't find $1.6 billion. And your attorney general doesn't even bring him up on charges? Oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry. Is that the same attorney general that worked for the law firm that represents MF Global? That's the kind of questions I would ask.
I think people would enjoy hearing it put that way. I don't know how the candidates would feel. One of the things that we're going to get back to this when we come back from the news, but one of the titles in the Journal this fall is "It's Not the Economy, Stupid." How could you say that when it's all we're talking about?
Well, what I mean is that it's a show, and that Obama should be getting blasted because it's all about the economy. And then you look and you go back and you play back through the presidential reality show, and we make fun of it along the way, how one of the major issues, and it took up the prostitute's time for quite a while, Romney's going to put God back on the platform. He's on the platform of the Republican convention. He's back on the platform. God is on the platform. I'm not going to take God off the platform. And then Obama comes back. I demand God be put back on the platform. You know what I thought about this? God that I know, the Jesus that both of these guys talk about, would rather hang on a cross than be on their platform.
Gerald, we leave it there and go to news. Gerald Celente, our guest, director of the Trends Research Institute, talking about the state of affairs in our nation and our world. 800-486-8655. Whether you agree or disagree, if you want to respond, I've got some phone lines for you. I'm Ben Merens. The program is At Issue. We take a break for news and come back. Nice to have you tuned to At Issue as we talk to Gerald Celente through this hour. It is our fall membership drive. You can pledge your support to At Issue online at WPR.org. Thanks to all of you, by the way, who did yesterday. We got pretty close to the goal of 30 pledges each hour. We set a record for At Issue last week with 90 pledges in 2 hours. And, well, it touches my heart when you take the time to support this program. And with your, not just your dollars, your heart, mind, and soul. And I appreciate the fact you're out there today, pledging or listening. WPR.org, where you pledge, or 800-486-8655. We take your calls for Trends researcher Gerald Celente. Gerald, when we talk about where this White House race is going, we talk about whether the debates make a big difference. According to the polls, actually, this last debate made a big difference because all of a sudden the race that seemingly showed us President Obama was pulling away 6-7 points. He's now down 4 or 5 points. We'll have a couple more debates to go, but the majority of Americans aren't watching the debates. So what do you think will ultimately decide if President Obama gets reelected or if former Governor Romney gets elected?
Oh, I believe the debates, because you don't have to watch them. All you have to do is hear about the fallout from them. And this debate, to me, by the way, is the best thing that ever happened to America, because it really exposed who these people are. As I said, I don't, again, speaking for myself, it was an insult to my intelligence. And I think a lot of people felt like that. And then it goes on, and they forget about that, and the debate then becomes, what happened to the president? Was it the altitude, Al Gore asks. And then, of course, Sununu, the former governor of New Hampshire, said, well, Obama was just lazy. How about that's who they are? And Obama's great in front of a stage show, and when he knows what the questions are going to be, and he's really not too good on his feet. Maybe, people have these handheld devices that they carry around with all the time and they get hooked on them. This guy maybe is hooked on his mind-held device, the teleprompter.
Well, okay, but maybe that's really not a fair criticism.
Oh, I do. Everything he does is staged.
Wait a second. I'm just saying maybe judging whether or not a man or woman is right to be president is not best done through a debate format that's not a true debate, with a moderator who doesn't have the heavy hand to stop them when he's supposed to stop them, and with two candidates who know they're being judged on a million things beyond substance. So they have to think about all those things as well.
I would say, Ben, it's all about substance. And that, who's ever the slicker at this point, this is a crisis situation we're in. This isn't child's play. You have people that are losing their homes. I'm up here in Kingston, New York. Yesterday was garbage day, and the bottles went out. And all night long, people ravaging through the cans, pulling out bottles. You look what's going on with these wars. Every day, our people are getting killed virtually over in Afghanistan. Libya's a mess. And now Syria's breaking out in war. There's no way to get out of this. And it becomes down to performance. Yes, here's what I believe will happen. The next two debates will depend upon who's going to win, absent some kind of event, the geopolitical event, a so-called October or November surprise. Absent that, to me, it's just going to be a show. It's one big show. Here's Ann Romney, hosting ABC Good Morning America, and all their wives out there pumping their husbands. How about this? Go out for a job. I don't care what the job is. Bring your wife along with you and let her tell your prospective employer how wonderful you are. You got laughed out of the place. This is no laughing matter. I could not imagine Eisenhower stooping to such levels. Here's Obama going to the United Nations. The world is in crisis. And what does he do? He doesn't have time. He does not have time to speak and meet with the other world leaders. I got an appointment on The View. Could you imagine Eisenhower yakking it up with the women on The View?
Gerald Celente, our guest. Back to the phones. Abu in Madison next. Hi, Abu.
Yes, good afternoon, and it's always good to hear Mr. Celente.
Thank you.
Mr. Celente, I follow you quite a bit and like what you say. And may I just make a comment and ask you a question? An example of how supine the media is in the United States is when the president says he's going to create more jobs and he's trying to sign in secret the Trans-Pacific Partnership, while the other candidate says he's going to be signing more of these multilateral agreements. Now, both of these, like NAFTA, are going to mean a wholesale loss of jobs. Yet the press does not query them, item by item on this. And my comment you said about the war, right now the United States, it appears, is aiding and abetting Turkey to cause all these problems there. But I can't see the United States going to war with Iran simply because Iran, not by virtue of superiority, has an ace up its sleeve, and that is it can stop all tanker traffic and cause the price of oil to go through the roof, and that will bring down the moribund Western economy especially. That's all. Thank you.
On the trade, you're 100%, Abu, correct. Both Obama and Romney brag about how they're going to open up more trade deals with different countries. And let's understand what free trade is. There's nothing free about it. All it is multinational corporations going overseas, getting their products made in the cheapest markets possible, slave labor markets virtually, bringing the product back and marking it up. That does not create jobs. And none of the press really go on to it. And then when you do talk about the debates and what the things both candidates are saying, that the press leaves them alone on, and particularly, as I call them, the Obama apologists. Here Obama, if you listen to his convention speech, he's talking about all that wonderful gas beneath our feet. Fracking. There's not a liberal that I know that is in favor of fracking. And he has given away 700 million acres public land for fracking. And what does Romney do? That's not enough. I'm going to give more. And then they talk about clean coal. How about almost pregnant? And both of them are talking about it, and they let him get away with it. They have no policies. And when you listen to Obama talk about alternative energies, he's stuck on the three majors that are proving to be minors: wind, solar, and biofuel. And as we're talking, I believe his name was Taylor, the first caller, a farmer up in Minnesota, and we're talking about prices in corn. Something like 40% of the corn crop went to ethanol, and it's a political deal. It costs us, the taxpayers. It does not produce the energy levels that are sufficient to do it. Yet they're doing it because it's a political game. So, yeah, they're not calling him out on anything. As for the wars, as the war is heating up between Syria and Turkey, listen to the language. It's very important. Here's what they say. Turkey is a NATO ally, a member of NATO. And under the NATO charter, if one member gets attacked, all members can respond in kind. So they're setting it up, as I see it, for more war. Will there be a war with Iran? I don't know. But every other week I hear something coming out of Netanyahu's mouth about drawing a red line. So, and I agree with you. If there's a war against Iran, as I see it, it's the beginning of World War III. These are the Persians. They've been around a long time. They're not going anywhere. They fought Iraq for 8 years, lost 1 million people, and did not give up 1 inch of territory. Oh, by the way, the war was began under the Carter then Reagan administration. Everybody may remember that wonderful photo of Donald Rumsfeld bringing golden spurs to Saddam Hussein to keep moving that war forward.
Gerald Celente, our guest this hour from the Trends Research Institute, 800-486-8655. If you'd like to join in, Abu, appreciate the call. Steele waiting to talk next from Appleton. Hi, Steele.
Hey, Mr. Celente. I like how you said you listen to RT, and I read that. I never heard China TV. I'll do that. I like reading the Brad blog, Brad Friedman, and he really gets down on the unverifiable votes with all the electronic voting, and I never hear that much in mainstream, and I would imagine a politician would like a hand-counted ballot. I'd like to hear your opinion on that.
Well, actually, I believe that we can have real online voting. If you could bank online, you could vote online. If we could move trillions of dollars around the world in days, in minutes, in hours, we could have secure online voting. That's the way I believe it.
Is that you're thinking we should be able to vote from our computer at home?
Absolutely. If we could bank online, we could vote online. And by the way, it would be totally transparent, not controlled by the mafia. They have different names now. They call themselves Republicans and Democrats. We call them Bananos and Gambinos, Lanskys and Schultzes. They're in control of the game. With the metrics available out there in the minds in the computer world, this should be transparent to everyone. And they would be able to figure out very rapidly whether or not the game was being rigged. So I believe that we should be voting online because the voting system, particularly here in New York, it stinks. It's an atrocity trying to go vote here. And it makes it really hard to do. And a lot of the ballots, and you look at how many, the numbers are coming in already on how many of the people that are voting paper ballot, pre-election ballot, are being disqualified. The whole system is rigged. It's controlled by, again, the two parties. So I'm in favor, actually, of online voting. If we could bank online, we could vote online. If we could move trillions of dollars, we could put one vote through.
Gerald Celente, our guest. The program at issue, Gerald Celente, founder and director of the Trends Research Institute. I'm Ben Merens. You call in at 800-486-8655. Joe in Economwalk next. Hello to you, Joe.
Hi, good afternoon. I was wondering what your guest thought about the rise and discuss the income gap between the rich and poor in the last 30 years, if that has anything to do with the uprisings in the Middle East and problems that causes with other economies.
Yeah, it's all income. That's the way we've been saying it for years. It's about income inequality. And by the way, look what's happened to this country. It breaks my heart, by the way. You know, I've written books about, one of my favorite books is called What Zizzy Gave Honey Boy. Zizzy was my aunt. And we used to play Scrabble. We used to talk, about the way life used to be. We'd pull out the photos and how people were dressed and dignified, listening to the music, and the family together. Really, it was a different country. And you could come, and people all over the world wanted to come here because this is the place where you got the shot. You could do it. You could open up a butcher's shop, a fish store, whatever it might be, a clothing store. It doesn't happen anymore. The gap between the rich and the poor is the widest in the United States than any of the industrialized nations. As I mentioned, what we're looking at when we talk of war, it has less to do with anything else other than money. And right now, far too few have much too much and way too many have much too little. That's what it's all about in Spain. Why are the people out by the millions in Portugal, in Greece? Because a handful of people have everything. They're taking the people's money to bail out banks. They call it austerity measures. Isn't that a lovely name? Here's an austerity measure for you. We're going to raise your taxes. Raise my taxes? I'm losing my job. I lost my jobs. Too bad. Oh, we're going to cut your pensions and benefits. What do you mean? I'm losing everything. You're going to cut it? That's right. We need your money. Oh, and by the way, your retirement age, we're going to increase it till after you're dead. See, this is all it's about. It's about income inequality, and it's as old as the ages. Try this one on. Off with your heads.
Gerald Celente, our guest. Trends Research Institute, he is the director of it. I'm Ben Merens. You're tuned to At Issue. A quick break and more. Glad you're listening. Gerald Celente, our guest this hour of At Issue. It is our fall membership drive, a quiet afternoon for pledging. We ask for your support. You can go do it if you'd like. Tomorrow we'll ask a little harder. Today you can pledge at WPR.org. If you've already pledged to this program or this network in this current pledge drive or any time in the last year, thank you, because over 40% of our budget comes from you. We couldn't do it without you. We wouldn't want to, because this is your network. You are the public in Wisconsin Public Radio. Coming up after the news at the top of the hour, it is National Bully Prevention Month, and we'll talk about bullying and why it takes place at schools, at workplaces, and how to fight back without really fighting. We'll talk about all of that with two different guests coming up after the news at 4. Gerald Celente, our guest in this hour. Gerald, you write about 9/11-11, what happened in Libya, and it's getting a lot of play. It's becoming sort of the swift boat issue of this election. What do you think happened there? What do we need to be talking about and learn more about there?
Well, it's not the incident, and again, of course, we wrote about it in detail, what they said and what it really was, and did it ever occur to anybody that there's a terrible civil war going on there, and they really hate the United States for what they did? Being that Libya was one of the richest countries in North Africa, if not on the continent, and they didn't like what happened, and maybe those were loyalists that we could give them other names, and is the United States deficient in protecting the consulate? They're deficient in everything they've been doing. They've lost the war in Iraq. They're losing the one in Afghanistan. They started one in Libya, a humanitarian mission. I love it, by the Nobel Peace Prize winner. Let me read you something, Ben. I wrote this in 1996. It's from my book, Trends 2000. I coined back then the word Crusades 2000. And this is what I wrote. The seeds of the new Crusades were sown in areas of Africa, the Middle East, Eastern Europe, and Asia. Throughout the Muslim world, devout masses, politically repressed and impoverished, were rising up against their endemically corrupt and inefficient secular governments with their pro-Western alliances. Remember, I wrote about this in 1996 as Trends 2000. This is what would be going on in the new millennium. Imperialism, directly or indirectly, took the blame for the poverty, the lack of opportunity, and the social and moral decay. Disenfranchised, desperate, politically powerless Muslims in many countries looked to charismatic clerics to change their destiny. That's all this is about. It's colonialism once again. It's the United States and the other countries propping up dictators, being involved in other countries where we have no business being. I love these presidential and all of these politicians out there who talk about our founding fathers. How about talking about what the founding father, Washington, the first president, said about becoming involved in foreign entanglements and how disgusting they were and how they would never do it. And then as you look at the current events forming future trends, how about this one? This is coming over the wire today. U.S. military is secretly sent into Jordan to help with crisis in Syria. Oh, great, man. Send more over there. Oh, isn't it beautiful what's going on in Detroit? It's so lovely. The town is so great. People, as I said, you have people in control that are out of control.
Gerald, I'm going to hold you so we get to the next caller. Alan in Appleton, good afternoon.
Hi, thanks for taking my call.
Yeah.
You spoke of Netanyahu, and I haven't heard your whole conversation today, but just something I heard a few weeks ago, or maybe a couple months ago, that Sheldon Adelson, who is Romney's biggest contributor now that Newt Gingrich is out of the race, has a newspaper in Israel that is the highest circulated newspaper because it's free. And basically it's a propaganda tool for Netanyahu and keeps him in power, and basically kept him in power past the last election. And I've heard a lot of things about Netanyahu. I guess I've really never paid a whole lot of attention to Israel. But the way it sounds that he pretty much just bullies everybody, even in his own party and people that work for him, to keep him quiet. And if we have, this collaboration between people that have a lot of money in this country and people that are in power over there, I think we have which we obviously do. But this just stinks of something that should not be going on. And I was wondering if you had any more information on that.
Actually, this TrendsJournal is filled with it, and I'm not saying that because I want you to get the TrendsJournal. Ben will tell you that there was page after page of this, and one of the most interesting things, of course, in it are comments coming out of, for instance, from the Kadima party, the opposition party in Israel, about Netanyahu and how he is interfering in America's elections. And this is unprecedented. If any other country would be into it here, this is, it's one after another, one quote after another about how Netanyahu has inserted himself into this election. And part of that being is when you look at what is going to win or lose this election, it has to do with the swing states. And one of them is Florida.
We could talk a lot more about this. I want to get to one more question because Mel wants to talk to you about some solutions as we wrap up. Alan, I appreciate the call. And again, the Middle East and Israel, a lot more to talk about there sometime down the road. Mel in Madison next. Hi, Mel.
Hello. I was just wondering if your guest could give us his solution to all of these really terrible problems.
Here's how I would begin. Number one is I would put back the laws in place that were put in place so these things wouldn't happen. I mentioned about staples. There used to be hardware stores, too. People used to have dress shops and little boutiques and on and on. There were laws put in place like the Sherman Antitrust Act, the Robinson-Patman Act, the Clayton Act, that gave everybody a shot at the game, that had been deregulated to turn the tables over and give it to the most powerful and the biggest. Also reinstate to its fullest extent the Glass-Steagall Act, which prohibited the banks from becoming these criminal operations. That was put in place, by the way, in the 1930s during the Great Depression. And you know who pushed for it? The bankers. The bankers pushed for it because they wanted for people to have trust in the banks. That was one of the reasons. Of course, there are financial reasons. The other things to do, I believe in direct democracy. As I mentioned, if we could bank online, and a lot of people do it, and aren't that many problems, and they're safer than the systems that we're using, let us vote online. You want to go to war, let the people vote. If you want to bail out banks and others, let the people vote. Let us vote on critical issues like they do in Switzerland. Whether there's 7 million, 17 million, 117 million, it makes no difference. One issue is one issue. Those are some of the things. On a more fundamental level, I try to do everything I can to promote my local community. It all begins at home.
And I'm going to leave it there so we can wrap this up properly. Gerald, thanks so much for the time today. As always, I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me, Ben.
Gerald Celente is founder and director of the Trends Research Institute. He publishes the Trends Journal. The website is TrendsResearch.com, or go to WPR.org, and you can link to the Celente site. We link to almost every site of the guests, all the guest sites, that is, who you hear on this program. WPR.org is the place to go to pledge your support to Wisconsin Public Radio, to @issue for programs just like this. It's our fall membership drive, so your pledge right now goes towards the goal we have of staying financially strong because of individuals just like you. Our program producer to put this together today, Chris Molina. On-air producer in from Madison today, also Chris Molina. Thanks to all of you who listened in, those of you who called in, who posted. You can still post and continue the conversation on our Facebook site, At Issue with Ben Merens. I'm Ben Merens, glad that you're listening to At Issue. Hope you'll stick around. There's more talk coming your way here on the Ideas Network. 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 Here on the Ideas Network.